Good afternoon and welcome to the Zone Institute special session on servant leadership. My name is Jerry Hall and I will be your moderator for the session. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Reno, Nevada, and past Vice President and Director of Rotary International. We are conducting the Institute special session in a new way. Most are familiar with Zoom meetings, but there are a few quick reminders of what to expect and how to best experience the session today. Your video and audio have been muted to limit distractions. Both will be turned on when we get to the Q&A session. You may have a better experience if you use speaker view or full screen view during the presentation. If you registered when entering the session, we will send you a complete Rotary biography for our presenters. We'll also send you a recommended reading list on servant leadership. If you have a question about a topic, please put the question in the Q&A, which you find in the Zoom control at the bottom of your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A at the end of the session. The session will be recorded and available soon. Okay, let's get going and let's get started. Servant leadership was conceived many years ago by Robert Greenleaf, an executive of AT&T Communications. This is Greenleaf's concept of service and the evolution of leaders. There's obviously much more involved in the concept, and we'll provide a more detailed explanation as we progress. It will be helpful to keep in mind a few basics of Rotary. Vision statement is clear and precise, indicating our preferred future. It speaks to how we see our role in the future and the arena in which we will operate. In addition to Rotary's vision, we have guiding principles defined in our core values. Service is a major element of our mission. How we provide service to those we serve moves us toward the vision we foresee. The power of combined efforts knows no limitation. The time we spend together serving others leads to friendship and fellowship, two of the most cherished elements of our Rotary membership. We encourage membership diversity in our vocations, our activities, and our service work. We are an international organization, and that provides much of the richness we experience. As a professional business organization, we expect accountability from our leaders and fellow members. We adhere to high ethical and professional standards in our personal relationships, and we steward the resources entrusted to us. The nature of Rotary brings together a diverse group of individuals who are leaders in their fields of endeavor. We believe in the importance of leadership development and in leadership as a quality of our members. As Rotarians, we are leaders in implementing our core values. For our virtual presentation to be most effective and with sensitivity to the schedules of our guest presenters, we have chosen to use a combination of live and pre-recorded presentations. If you have questions, please click on the Q&A button and insert your question. My colleague and fellow Rotarian David Crumbley will monitor and present questions during the Q&A at the end of the session. First, I'd like to introduce and thank a special group of friends that will be sharing in the presentation of the Servant Leadership Program. These senior leaders include, in order of appearance, Jorita Solari, Rotary International Vice President and Director, Stephanie Urchik, Executive Committee Chair and member of the Board of Directors of Rotary International and past trustee of the Rotary Foundation, Peter Kyle, member, Board of Directors of Rotary International, Jennifer Jones, Rotary International President nominee, past Rotary International Vice President and past trustee of the Rotary Foundation, John Hugo, Chief Executive Officer and General Secretary of Rotary International. First, we will take a look at servant leadership from the perspective of educators, consultants, and business professionals that use servant leadership. The video was produced and directed by fellow Rotarian Kent Keith of the Honolulu Sunrise Rotary Club. Kent is a former CEO of the Greenleaf Institute for Servant Leadership, an author on servant leadership, and also authored The Paradoxical Commandments. While the video emphasizes work in the private for-profit sector, servant leadership is even better suited to Rotary and the volunteer world in which we serve others. As we move forward today, keep your focus on how the key practice of servant leadership can apply to your profession, your work, and how it might apply to Rotary.
leadership is a philosophy based on the importance of serving others. It is ethical, practical, and meaningful. It is ethical because it is about serving people, not using people. It is practical because servant leaders get results. It is meaningful because it is about helping your colleagues grow so that your organization can be of greater service and make a positive impact on society.
Robert Greenleaf knew that leadership can make a difference in our organizations and our society. Greenleaf worked for AT&T, where he was the Director of Management Research. It was his job to educate and train the leaders and managers of AT&T to be as effective as possible. He concluded after 38 years of experience that the most effective leaders and managers were those who were not focused on their own power and wealth, but rather were focused on serving their colleagues and customers. In 1970, Greenleaf launched the modern servant leadership movement with his classic essay, The Servant as Leader. It was in that essay that he coined the words servant leader and servant leadership.
And it probably starts with listening as a practice.
Isabel Lopez was for many years a business manager. She is now a leadership consultant and an author sharing the insights of Robert Greenleaf.
People all over the world understand the importance of serving others. The idea actually goes back centuries, crosses cultures and religions. Robert Greenleaf brought this idea into the world of our large modern organizations. The core message is that servant leaders are driven by a desire to serve. And then, by conscious choice, that person chooses to lead. The test that Greenleaf laid out is, do those served, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and themselves then more apt to serve? And further, do they not harm the least advantaged among us? His vision was that servant leaders would transform organizations into institutions that would not only offer creative opportunities, but that they would also create a more just and caring society.
While training and educating the leaders of AT&T, Greenleaf was in touch with noted management experts of his day, such as Peter Drucker and Douglas McGregor. McGregor was the author of an influential book titled The Human Side of Enterprise, in which he described Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X assumes that most people don't like work and will avoid it if they can. They don't want to be responsible and they have little ambition. Theory Y is much more positive. Theory Y assumes that people are willing to work. They are willing to accept responsibility and will exercise creativity in solving organizational problems. Dr. Kent Keith is a speaker and author who has served as the CEO of the Greenleaf Center established by Robert Greenleaf in 1964. He explains how Greenleaf went beyond Theory X and Theory Y.
Most people are willing to accept responsibility, and a lot of people have the capacity to exercise their imagination, ingenuity, and creativity in solving organizational problems. But here's the key point. According to McGregor, under the conditions of modern industrial life, the intellectual potential of most people is only being partially utilized. So Greenleaf took the next obvious step. If people are willing to work, but only part of their potential is being used, why don't we help them grow so they can use all of their potential? That's good for the individual because the individual gets to grow. When the capacity of the individual grows, the capacity of the organization grows, so it's good for the organization. The organization can do things better or do things it's never done before. And that's good for the organization's customers or clients or patients or members because the organization can serve them better. So it's a triple win, a win for the individual, the organization, and the customer.
In the early 1970s, when Greenleaf wrote his first essay, Jack Lowe Sr. got a copy. Lowe was president of Texas Distributors, a company that is today known as TD Industries, a successful air conditioning and specialty construction company headquartered in Dallas. It has been on the Fortune magazine list of the 100 best places to work in America every year since the list was started. Fortune magazine has placed TD Industries in its Hall of Fame. Jack Lowe Jr. succeeded his father as chairman and CEO in the 1980s.
In the early 70s, Dad had come across Greenleaf's first essay, and he shared it with the employees of our company, which we call partners. He brought people together in groups of about 15 for all-day meetings. This wasn't the only thing they discussed, but it was one of them. Mother fixed spaghetti lunch every time for 2 years. They talked about what kind of company we wanted to have, what their values would be, how they wanted to be led, and how they wanted to lead. Out of those conversations, servant leadership became a core part of our company culture. Today, we say that you have to produce the results for which you're responsible in your job, and you also have to be a servant leader, by which we mean help those around you grow. If you can't be pretty good at both, producing the results and being a servant leader, you can't work at TD Industries for the long term. We'll help you with both, but you got to be good at both of them, and both are equally important to us.
Do you think there's a way to tie our sponsors into some of this volunteer opportunity?
Servant leadership is about getting results. Over the years, well-known companies like Southwest Airlines, Starbucks, The Container Store, Men's Warehouse, The Toro Company, PPC Partners, First Fruits, Aflac, and Synovus Financial have implemented servant leadership principles. Kelvin Red worked at Synovus Financial and now heads up a servant leadership center in Columbus, Georgia.
I worked at Synovus Financial back in the late 1990s when Fortune magazine listed it as the #1 best place to work in America. That was no accident. People there were implementing servant leadership. And servant leadership works. It's very practical. There are things that servant leaders do that make them effective. For example, they're good at listening. They listen to their colleagues so they can figure out what their colleagues need to be effective and perform at their highest possible levels. They listen to customers so they know what customers want and can provide it to them. That makes customers happy. Servant leaders develop people, coach and mentor them, and then give them freedom to make their own decisions. Servant leaders also exercise foresight. They study the trends so they have a good idea of what they need to do to continue serving. They lead. They don't just react. They get out in front of the curve.
Dr. Ann McGee Cooper knew Robert Greenleaf and interacted with him while she was learning about servant leadership in the late 1980s. She has been helping companies implement servant leadership principles ever since.
One thing I think is unique about servant leadership is that it's not a single style of leadership. It's about identifying and meeting the needs of the organization, its team members, and the people the organization serves. The servant leader uses whatever style is needed in each situation and with each person she or he is leading. In an emergency, the servant leader may need to issue orders to save lives. Yet, in another situation, the servant leader may just need to make suggestions or offer options. And some colleagues need more direction while others need less. The servant leader adjusts her or his leadership to meet the needs of others. That's another way of saying that it's not about the leader, it's about those being served.
Scholarly research is now becoming available on the impacts of servant leadership in the workplace. Dr. Bob Lydon is a professor of management at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He and his colleagues conduct research on servant leadership.
We are still at an early stage in the research, but the results are consistently showing that servant leadership positively impacts the workplace in a number of ways. For example, servant leaders excel at building and facilitating teams. They create work environments that encourage people to pitch in and help out. Employees who are led by servant leaders have enhanced job performance, greater commitment, and report greater job satisfaction. Employees led by servant leaders are more creative because they have greater trust in their leaders. A recent study shows that servant leadership benefits the bottom line of organizations, as CEO servant leadership was found to be positively related to firm performance.
Servant leadership works when times are tough. An example is the closure of the Delphi brake assembly operations in Dayton, Ohio. The employees were told in 2006 that the plant would close in 2 years. When the announcement was made, many people left, so a new workforce had to be hired and trained. They had to perform at the highest possible levels, knowing that they would all be losing their jobs. Mary Miller was a human resources manager for the Delphi brake assembly operations during the 2-year shutdown process.
We faced so many challenges that it was hard to know what to do. What we did was implement some basic principles of servant leadership. We listened more than we talked. We asked employees what they needed. We set aside time for foresight and planning, and we focused on helping people to grow. We sat down with all our colleagues and developed individual plans that would help them get the experience or training or education that they would need to get their next job. The results were outstanding. We became one of the safest manufacturing operations in America. Our defect rate was single-digit parts per million. Our on-time delivery was 99.5%, and our financial performance was the best it had been in decades. On our last day, when the operations closed, we were the best we had ever been. Servant leadership was the reason.
What is the future of servant leadership? There are many factors, but in the end, the future may be promising because new generations want to work for servant leaders.
I think a lot of younger people want more than the traditional idea of success.
We want to work for an organization that's committed to making a difference in the lives of others.
An organization that is ethical, practical, and provides its employees with meaningful work.
That's the kind of organization I want to work for.
An organization that's committed to servant leadership.
That's the kind of company that I'd love to be a part of.
Welcome to this special session on servant leadership. The video provides a clear description of the servant leadership concept and is well aligned with all we do in Rotary. We provide service to each other, our clubs, our community, and to those in need at home and abroad. This commitment to service is inherent in all we do and reflects our motto of service above self. I don't know of a leadership concept better suited to implementation throughout Rotary than the servant leadership model. Like many of you, I found great joy in Rotary service. And as I reflected on the service opportunities Rotary provided, I realized that my experience came because I took that initial step forward to serve in Rotary. Whether working on a club project or attending fellowship events, it was always time well spent. The enjoyment for me came easy, but I also enjoyed experiencing the work of Rotary with others. We've had fun together. Our projects improve the quality of people's lives. One project sometimes leads to another. And as we worked, our friendships grew and blossomed. No matter how you choose to serve, you'll enjoy what we do as Rotarians and find your own outcomes that will make your membership and involvement worthwhile and valuable. The video we watched makes it clear that a servant leader serves others first. Those that are served learn the value of service, and as they begin to serve, they may make the conscious choice to lead. But it all starts with our motto, service above self. In Rotary, we often see the Rotary Club president as the first among equals. As the club leader serves others and demonstrates and utilizes the key practices and principles of servant leadership with their fellow members, everyone grows and new and stronger leaders begin to appear. Similarly, district governors can be most effective by demonstrating servant leadership when working with, supporting, and providing service to clubs. Providing service first is the essence of servant leadership. And as today's session progresses, you'll learn more about the techniques that will help you become an effective servant leader. Dr. Kent Keith of the Honolulu Sunrise Rotary Club and the former CEO of the Greenleaf Institute has identified a series of servant leader key practices. In the discussion that follows, each key practice will be considered and explained by a well-respected Rotary senior leader. Learning to effectively use and apply key practices will require repetition and careful application, but you'll like the results. Once you start your journey in servant leadership, you'll have many opportunities to serve others around you. Use what you experience today to help find a new, stronger, and more satisfying way to Rotary service. This is just one more way Rotary opens opportunities. And as you begin your servant leadership journey, have a great year of Rotary service and be sure to have some fun along the way.
Jarita, thank you for opening the discussion on servant leader key practices, and thanks for sharing your personal Rotary philosophy and experiences. Our first guest presenter is Stephanie Urchik, Rotary International Director, Chair of the RI Executive Committee, and past trustee of the Rotary Foundation. Stephanie has a doctorate in leadership studies and has an educational consulting practice. Stephanie, thank you for being with us today. Can you share a few observations on the first two key practices of servant leadership? That would be self-awareness and listening.
Jerry, I'm happy to spend a few minutes talking with you about servant leadership. Robert Greenleaf's ideas are timeless, and while they already are in use in many of our daily practices, experience suggests that reminders can always be useful. We need to carefully assess and understand our own strengths and weaknesses. Understanding who we are, what we're capable of, and what we're best at doing can help us when we serve others. When we serve others, we should always use our strengths to help those we are trying to serve. This is one of the quickest ways to build relationships and to help others to grow in a positive way. Using one's strength doesn't mean doing the task for the person you are serving. A few well-placed questions to the person being served can provide guidance, identify what will be of most help, or will allow the person being served to find a satisfactory solution on his or her own. You'll also begin to learn more about the strengths and weaknesses of others, and that will be useful in building your own knowledge as a servant leader. The way we present ourselves or the words we use can create a positive environment for the service we provide. If we use the right words and if we present them in a way that is well received, we'll be much closer to our goal of providing quality service. Observing others' reactions will help you to better understand the impact you are having on those you serve. Rotary is a volunteer organization, and directing is not as effective as persuading. In Rotary, persuasion is much more powerful than issuing orders or directives. Our words and our actions matter. Think for a moment about how to ask someone to take a responsible position or to conduct an important task. Is this something you can do via email or by text or telephone, or should you have a face-to-face conversation? Depending on how important the matter is, scheduling time with someone to explain your idea and what you want them to do is key to building a winning team and improving performance. Asking individuals to help engages them and allows you to check in periodically to see if they need help or assistance. While they're serving, you continue to serve them. How we conduct ourselves with others can impact our relationships. An inappropriate statement, a lack of sensitivity, a careless try at humor, or doing something that may be judged inappropriate can cost us the trust of our colleagues. The old saying that words matter is true. Well-chosen remarks build positive relationships and lead to good outcomes. Many organizations refer to each other as partners, associates, or colleagues. It's a good practice in just about any setting, but especially so in Rotary. We often refer to each other as fellow Rotarians, and that suggests that the leader is simply first among equals. This can become even more important because today, cultural sensitivity is a constant in our interactions with others. A winning smile is always welcome. During the pandemic, not seeing someone smile because of a mask is something that we miss. The smile can be an indication of a positive attitude, especially when used with positive comments and remarks. Even behind a mask, a smile can be heard. Of all the key practices of servant leadership, none may be more important than projecting a positive attitude. A positive attitude is contagious. If you're happy, those around you will be happy as well. Listening is a key to understanding people and issues. Listening and hearing are just part of this key practice because we also need to listen to understand. Good servant leaders listen first and then identify the needs of those they are serving. Simple? Yes, but all too often we don't listen enough to gather the information we need. If we don't have all the information needed, how can we best serve those in need? When Robert Greenleaf developed the servant leader concept, he placed high value on listening. His observations, documented in studies and essays, found that people that listened to understand were much more effective and much more productive. He suggested that people have plenty to contribute, but often need the benefit of thoughtful questions to bring out the information they may have. It's not a complicated process, but thought needs to be given to the type of questions that are used. Greenleaf suggested it was better to ask open-ended questions to allow the other person to provide answers that might include other unknown but helpful information. Open-ended questions are likely to begin with words like how, what, and why. An important listening skill is silence. Once a question is asked, wait for a response, even if the silence is uncomfortable. Once the speaker begins, let her finish. Then ask follow-up questions if necessary. This demonstrates your interest in the speaker and what he has to say. Use silence if needed, but keep probing until you're comfortable that you understand. It's always good practice to reflect and tell the other person, I think I heard you say, or just to make sure I understand, you said. This simple process can lead to confirming facts, feelings, and your understanding of the conversation. When gathering information, it's better to ask, receive, confirm, and then take time to consider. Once you understand, you're in the best position to be of service to others. Getting to know someone through conversation is something we do intuitively. But knowing a person's needs, wants, and dreams can open lines of communication and can increase understanding. If you're like me, You may have had interesting experiences when people began to open up spontaneously. That occurs because trust has been established. Greenleaf and his biographers saw the understanding of others' needs, wants, and their dreams as a moral responsibility. Listening provides the opportunity to express empathy to someone you are serving. Often, this can occur in a more personal way because the servant leader understands the other person's needs, wants, and dreams. You can demonstrate in words and in actions that you care. It's been a painful lesson, but circumstances can change. We need to keep listening because others may be seeing things that we don't see. There may be more information available to help guide us. The servant leader is dedicated to the ongoing process of listening, questioning, reflecting, and confirming in order to adjust and to provide better service to others. I provide consulting and training for colleges and universities. It's a challenging environment these days, but one that I really enjoy. Being aware of my own strengths and limitations, how I'm perceived by others, and how I go about providing service to my clients is important. Self-awareness helps me to serve clients better, and it's just as helpful in Rotary. As a director and current chair of the Rotary International Executive Committee, I spend time working with other Rotary leaders. Often, I'm just listening, understanding the needs of others and how to best apply my strengths to serve the family of Rotary has helped me and those I serve. At the international level, we work through culture and language in nearly every issue. Being self-aware and being able to listen effectively are two important servant leadership practices that I highly recommend for your servant leadership toolbox. Good luck on your journey to self-awareness and active listening.
Stephanie, thank you for sharing your observations about self-awareness and listening. These two key practices provide a great start to our discussion of servant leadership. Our second guest presenter is Peter Kyle, Rotary International Director and recipient of the Rotary Foundation Global Alumni Service to Humanity Award. Peter is from New Zealand, has been in private law practice, and before retiring was a senior international attorney with the World Bank located in Washington, D.C. Peter, thank you for joining us today. Can you share your thoughts on changing organizational structure and developing colleagues?
Thank you. I'm very happy to share my thoughts on the key practices of servant leadership. As Stephanie indicated, Robert Greenleaf's ideas are timeless. But as we talk about organizational structure, we may need to make a few adjustments for Rotary. Robert Greenleaf was an executive with AT&T, and he had unfettered access to the AT&T Chief Executive Officer. His assignment gave him free rein to identify and develop management and leadership techniques that would allow AT&T to continue to have a leading role as a communications titan. Don Frick, a Greenleaf biographer, paints a picture of Greenleaf as an unassuming fellow who listened, learned, and taught others what he had observed. His view of organizational structure suggested it was often ineffective and could constrain efficiency and productivity. Greenleaf's solution was to broaden the top of the pyramid so the responsible person would have more access to those who might know more about what was going on, even on an informal basis. He also suggested teams in which the leader is not necessarily the boss, but rather the primus inter pares, or first among equals, may be more appropriate. Others have suggested flattening the organizational chart, turning the pyramid upside down or on its side as a means of changing organizational dynamics. Greenleaf's concept was to create a communication process that ultimately shared information freely and allowed those best equipped to lead change to do so. It also allowed the Chief Executive Officer to communicate with others more directly. There is a parallel in Rotary. The club president is truly first among equals and will benefit from being open to new ideas, listening, as was discussed in the earlier key practice, and making it a point to talk with club members as if they are part of the leadership team. People with different perspectives have much to contribute to the overall goals of and objectives of the organization. Organizational structure needs to be less formal, so people feel free to discuss and contribute openly. This may be difficult in the corporate world, but in Rotary it is much easier to understand if we accept that our club and district leaders are first among equals. The notion of gathering knowledgeable people together to problem solve and identify solutions to issues within our Rotary clubs and districts is easy to implement. Even when a club president or a district governor is open and willing to take input, they must be careful how they receive and process information. If they are being told what they want to hear without constructive critique or input of new ideas, little is achieved. Questioning others and listening comes into play. Primus inter pares, first among equals terminology, may have originated in medieval European universities. It seems that the faculty of a university would elect someone from within the faculty to serve as the leader, and they became known as primus inter pares. Decisions were made when the leader facilitated discussion and the group arrived at a consensus. Compare that with the process that we use today, where formal votes are taken on just about every decision. Primus inter pares is a way to share leadership and create continuity. It will help eliminate challenges that can cause conflict within organizations. The use of consensus builds upon the concept of informed consent, an especially useful tool in creating an open and transparent environment. When the process is working correctly, the servant leader, be it the club president or the district governor, should be the resource person, helping colleagues or Rotarians find and get the help they need. It may be a club president finding help for a special committee that needs assistance, or a district governor locating information to assist a Rotary club that is having difficulties. This is the kind of service that a servant leader can provide to others in the organization. Within Rotary, the club president or district governor becomes the servant leader, providing service to those needing help and assistance. Greenleaf's best test of the servant leader was, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? With the Rotary mission and vision statements and the Rotary core values as backdrop, it is clear that if we apply the concept of servant leadership in Rotary, we have the opportunity to benefit our fellow Rotarians as well as those we serve. It seems to be a pretty simple test that can provide excellent outcomes if the leadership model is properly aligned with our Rotary ideals. Supporting our colleagues is the key to strengthening the organization. When Stephanie discussed listening she talked about getting to know our fellow Rotarians and those we serve at a personal level. As we learn more about a colleague's needs, wants, and dreams, we can support them and help them grow. These things seem intuitive, but it takes time to develop this technique. When you learn to utilize this skill, you'll be surprised at how colleagues react and how they will grow and mature into service-minded leaders. In Rotary, we talk a lot about increasing membership. There are many reasons to increase membership, including increasing our service delivery capability, expanding fellowship opportunities, and even broadening the revenue base to support our service to others. Does it make sense to strengthen and prioritize our current membership as a strategy to grow Rotary? When we help our colleagues to grow, the capacity and ability of our organization to serve others also grows. As we help members to find their way to service, they will grow in remarkable ways. As their enthusiasm for service grows, they will be more apt to recruit others with a similar mindset. Growing colleagues and fellow Rotarians strengthen our organization, and you can help make it a strategic priority in your club or district. This is a key element of Robert Greenleaf's servant leadership concept. Greenleaf suggested that when we serve others, if they become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, they will be more likely themselves to become servants. When we work with fellow Rotarians, we should always be looking for ways to meet this basic test, and that should inform how we interact, serve, and help grow our colleagues and fellow Rotarians. As they are served, they will be inclined to choose to serve others. They too may choose to lead and become servant leaders. We sometimes forget that Rotary does develop leaders. It may be the experienced Rotarian asked to serve as a club leader, or the newest member asked to serve on a committee. We have the opportunity to help them grow into the leadership role they have accepted or chosen. Rotary is in the business of growing people. We are a service organization, but the very structure of Rotary provides opportunities to grow and expand our horizons. A good servant leader can do much to help fellow Rotarians find their way forward as a Rotary or community leader. I remember a challenging assignment with the World Bank some years ago when I was asked to begin working on the former Soviet Union's transition from a socialist legal system to one based on market principles. I was one of about 20 so-called experts within the World Bank who were recruited to become part of this team. And over the space of some 2 to 3 years, this team would travel on a regular basis to Moscow, working with our Russian counterparts to develop the laws, the regulations, the procedures to allow for the country to transition from a socialist system to a market-based economy. Each member of the team was an expert in their field. There were lawyers, there were economists, but we had a mission leader, and his job was to coordinate and to facilitate discussion. Every night we would meet to discuss what we had found that day, the challenges that we had encountered, and the solutions that we were keen to propose. And the mission leader would listen, coordinate the various recommendations, and propose a course of action for the next day. This, to me, was a prime example of a servant leader, listening, encouraging each member of the team to develop their ideas, to grow as a member of the team, and to contribute significantly to the overall outcome of the mission. A great example of servant leadership in action. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the servant leader key practices of changing the organizational structure and developing colleagues and strengthening the organization. Your experience in Moscow while working with the World Bank provided an excellent example of servant leadership. Thanks again. Our next guest presenter is Jennifer Jones, Rotary International President nominee, past RI Vice President, and past trustee of the Rotary Foundation. Jennifer is president of Media Street Productions, a full-service television and video production company located in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Jennifer, congratulations on your nomination as the 2022-23 president of Rotary International. We're looking forward to your leadership, and thank you for joining us today. Can you share your thoughts on the servant leader key practices, coaching, not controlling, and unleashing the energy and intelligence of others?
Thanks, Jerry. In this key practice, we see a significant departure from the leadership power model that for so long was the leadership model in most businesses. The power model required complete compliance with the directives and policies set by the leader at the top of the pyramid, and the purpose was to control. This attitude was prominent in the early management literature based on what seemed to work best at the time. We now know that coaching is far better than trying to control colleagues, and the servant leader model clearly offers a better way. People respond to directives because of the power relationships that exist in the workforce and the power of the paycheck. The old saying, "Do as I say, not as I do," is a reminder that leaders were not always concerned about setting examples. Servant leaders understand that people cannot be controlled, but they can be inspired to do more than expected based on how they're treated. The story in the servant leadership video we saw showcased TD Industries and their value system that put emphasis on growing and developing associates. The attitude is organic in the company, and growing employees results in better business outcomes. That's how it should be in Rotary. Rotarians can be motivated and inspired, and that's where good servant leaders are most effective. Volunteers are a special bunch. You can ask the impossible of them, and they'll say, "When do we start?" Once engaged, they want to do the best job they can and are open to coaching and ideas to do it better and faster. The good servant leader is always on the lookout for opportunities to support the volunteers with encouragement, ideas, and plenty of gratitude. Remember, it's usually best practice to ask questions to help someone find their own best solution. How are you doing? What can I do to help? These two questions are music to the volunteers' ears. They're being acknowledged for doing a task they were asked to do. They have an opportunity to provide feedback to the servant leader, and they can ask for help if it's needed. The servant leader can ask questions to reinforce or guide, can aid if necessary, and can facilitate assistance from others or in other ways satisfy the volunteer's needs. The situation provides a great opportunity for interaction with only positive outcomes for the volunteer and the servant leader. There was a time when management training emphasized delegation as the best way for a manager to assure accomplishment and control work. Today, we know how service and support is provided to others can significantly improve outcomes. We know that our volunteers' time may be limited, and if they're asked to do something, they'll want to complete the assignment in a timely and good fashion. Servant leaders can create positive energy through their willingness to work with and coach the volunteers they lead. Good servant leaders work hard to provide positive energy through their actions and support provided to those they serve. The diversity of Rotary classifications and vocations presents a broad range of knowledge and experience available to our organization. However, some volunteers may benefit from coaching and learning more about whatever it is that they're doing for Rotary. The servant leader can be helpful in teaching, guiding, and coaching. The corollary to this might be that the servant leader will gain more insight through the volunteer's experience, and new ideas may present. At some point, the volunteer is simply turned loose. Empowering others to run on their own unleashes energy that may have been laying dormant, waiting for an opportunity. As knowledge and experience grow, colleagues can be encouraged to make decisions. These decisions can be unilateral, or if a committee's involved, it's always better to let the committee share in the decision process if it appears to be necessary. Servant leaders should strive for consensus on issues under consideration. Taking a vote tends to suggest there may be winners or losers, although there may be times when it's necessary to record a vote. Consensus building is a key practice in servant leadership, although not called out as one in this overview. Consensus building often takes more time, can result in revisiting an issue if necessary, but usually leaves those involved in a more pleasant state of mind. One needs to be wary of the paralysis by analysis syndrome, but planning for fruitful discussions that fairly hear all sides of an issue while developing consensus is always good practice. As colleagues grow with increased knowledge, expertise, and begin to make decisions, the organization will be strengthened. Jack Lowe Sr., founder of TD Industries, profiled in the servant leadership video, suggests leaders are people builders. They help those around to grow because the more strong people an organization has, the stronger it will be. Rotary is people building too. We help our members to grow. We increase their knowledge. We empower them, and we strengthen our organization in the process. As we've discussed the key practices of servant leaders, none may be more important than generating enthusiasm within the team. If a servant leader can find a way to give their colleagues choices out of how to accomplish tasks, it can unleash their intrinsic motivation. That in turn unleashes innovation. People become more productive, and they may find new and better ways of accomplishing tasks. Rotary clubs and districts typically have the old workhorses that seem to turn out when asked. If not handled correctly, they too can suffer burnout and lose enthusiasm. A good servant leader will find ways to inspire and motivate colleagues to unleash ever more energy in providing service to others.
I'll be sharing a few thoughts with you about the key practice of foresight, and we'll add an extra key practice of conceptualization, persuasion, and stewardship. Using the key practices, the servant leader should understand the circumstances and environment in which they work. They listen carefully to people and are very sensitive to everything that might impact their organization. Armed with this information, the servant leader can help create a preferred future for the organization. It is the responsibility of the leaders to look beyond the immediate horizon. In any organization, and especially on Rotary, it is essential that the leader maintain transparency and utilize common vision techniques while serving others and building consensus. Consensus brings understanding and commitment. Identifying a preferred future and documenting it through a strategic plan, including mission, vision, core values or guiding principles, and overarching goals is something all good organizations do. Implementing the plan in a methodical way, monitoring progress, and adjusting based on changing circumstances are all hallmarks of an excellent organization. The servant leaders should be constantly alert to changing conditions and must make appropriate adjustments to protect the preferred future of the organization. It is not easy, but it is essential. Whether for profit or nonprofit, good servant leaders react to situations but are deliberate before modifying or recommending change to the long-term preferred future. In Rotary, change may seem like turning a large ship in the ocean. It takes time. The changes that are sometimes necessary may span multi-year club or district administrations, but that should not deter the servant leader from building consensus for well-thought-out decisions. The question should always be, what is in the best long-term interest of the organization? When a preferred future is identified, continuity in leadership is essential for purposes of implementing the plan. Updating the preferred future should occur on a periodic basis, but not every year. Plans should be multi-year, and when changes are made, it should be with consultation of a diverse group of knowledgeable Rotarians. The leader should assure understanding of the plan and that mechanisms are in place to maintain forward momentum. Robert Greenleaf said that failure to foresee events or outcomes can be interpreted as an ethical failure. A good servant leader, utilizing the key practices we are identifying today, can help ensure a prosperous and productive future. Leading Leading is often described as knowing what to do at the right time, and managing or operating is knowing how to do what is needed. Robert Greenleaf suggested that the different skills required to be a leader or manager usually are discrete, in that a leader may not necessarily be a good manager, or vice versa. He also theorized that when someone has both skills, they can be much more effective because they see the entire process from concept through implementation. Conceptualization allows a servant leader to identify a need, conceive a solution, and then create and share a common vision with those responsible for implementation. Common vision is simply developing a story or verbal description of what has been identified or needed, and sharing that vision in a way that excites the imagination of others. Done correctly, the entire team will join to do something as a group that would be exceedingly difficult for a single individual. The use of conceptualization and common vision greatly expands the capability of an organization and the effectiveness of the servant leader. It has long been understood by excellent leaders that better results can be obtained through persuasion. Employees and volunteers are more inclined to perform at a higher level and accomplish more if they believe what they have been asked to do is appropriate and will yield positive results. When we talk about a task being appropriate, we should apply an ethics or morality test to make sure the task and outcome is ethical. When something new is being considered, taking the time to explain why the task is important and how it will contribute to a positive and useful outcome is essential in gaining support and commitment. Stewardship is simply caring for the institution of Rotary, our Rotarians, and those we serve. We must consider strategies to protect and sustain the institution of Rotary. We should provide for the effective continuation of Rotary International support staff, maintain a sensitivity to the needs of the volunteer force we lead, and the unmet needs of those we serve. If Rotary as an institution for doing good in the world is to be sustained, we must shoulder the stewardship responsibility as good servant leaders. In my professional career, I had responsibility for a multidisciplinary staff and a large annual budget. We designed and built urban highways and operated a public transit system. Like most organizations, we had weekly staff meetings, but I implemented a quarterly collegium to flatten the pyramid. It was a simple process in which the senior staff met as a group and talked about pressing issues facing our organization. In these meetings, I was not the boss because I wanted the very best insight I could get from others closer to the issues. It was essential that we communicate candidly with each other. It took courage to get into a mindset that allowed everyone to speak openly without fear of retaliation. I often heard things that made me uncomfortable, and I listened more than I talked, often learning more than I expected. Knowing ourselves well, trusting each other, and listening to what others had to say brought us to a higher level of performance and significantly increased our potential for success. I encourage you to develop and build trusting relationships with the key servant leader practices we have discussed today. The key practices are time-proven ways to help you serve others, and in the process, develop new committed leadership for Rotary and those we serve. Our next presenter is John Huco, Rotary International Chief Executive Officer and General Secretary. John is an attorney by training and is a member of the Rotary Club of Kyiv, Ukraine. John, thank you for being with us today. You serve the Rotary International Board of Directors, the trustees of the Rotary Foundation, and through your staff, Rotarians worldwide. That is a huge responsibility. Can you share with us how you view serving such diverse groups utilizing servant leadership?
Well, first, Jerry, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. The concept of servant leadership is remarkably similar to Rotary's ideal of service and our motto, service above self. Our avenues of service are built around service first. Service occurs first and is delivered by the servant leader. And if Greenleaf's test is met, those being served may choose to lead and serve others. As our presenters today have indicated, servant leadership is aligned with Rotary's motto of service above self. The key practices are structured to serve others while growing Rotarians and our service capability. Since the early days when Rotarians found their way to service with the first public restroom in Chicago, the ideal of service has been front and center for Rotarians. Service above self, avenues of service, and now Rotary causes and areas of focus. And all of these are key to serving others, whether at home or abroad. With Rotary, service first really says who we are, and servant leadership is a leadership model that echoes service above self. Our members are diverse in many ways, and while some have extensive backgrounds in leadership or management, others may have only limited experience. Service-first leadership represents a different way of seeing servant leadership. Yes, words do matter, and here they tell even more of a story. We do put service first, service to each other, service to our organization, and service to those we serve throughout the world. Servant leadership helps Rotary be even more successful. As we learn how to effectively utilize the servant leadership model, we will become better at providing service, and we'll develop an even stronger group of Rotarians and club and district leaders. Those who adopt the model in Rotary will find they can also apply the key practices in their business or professional environment with excellent results. As one becomes increasingly adept at using the key practices of servant leadership, and it becomes the norm rather than the exception, change will be remarkable. Colleagues grow as they learn the ways of servant leadership. Productivity increases, and outcomes are better. In Rotary, there's also an increased sense of teamwork and fellowship while serving and working together. And if we do it together, if we do it correctly, our clubs, districts, and our Rotary International support teams will continue to improve in how they provide service. Now, I recently gave a virtual presentation to a Rotary Club near the West Coast. As I completed my virtual talk, I gave them a call to action, and it went something like this. First, build your relationship with Rotaract, our newest member group. Second, work hard to engage and retain new members. Third, let's do service projects together, because people like to get together and do what needs to be done. 4, let's look for creative ways to raise funds to support our service work, particularly in this difficult COVID time, when it's more difficult to get together. 5, let's help other clubs that are not meeting or struggling. And finally, we need to realize that the sky is not falling. And it seems to me that we need to view today as an opportunity. In fact, I would say Rotary was made for this moment. Now I'm sharing this with you to demonstrate one of the many ways we can use our virtual tools. I encourage you and your club or district to move forward with this call to action too. Rotary will benefit, and so will you, your club, and your district. It's easy to recommend something that bridges culture, language, and social norms, based on our shared Rotary core values and our commitment to service. Servant leadership is a long-tested process that can and will provide excellent outcomes. Give it a try, and let servant leadership work for you.
Thank you, John. You provided a wonderful summary of how servant leadership fits with Rotary. As you indicated, servant leadership is well aligned with our ideal of service and our motto, service above self. If we simply think of service-first leadership, we have defined servant leadership in a Rotary environment. I was very happy to be asked to provide this presentation because I believe in servant leadership. I've used the key practices successfully in my professional career, and in Rotary, servant leadership, if used in Rotary, will bring better results for those we serve and will help develop new leaders for our organization. I encourage you to take what you have learned today and begin to explore the opportunities as you put servant leadership into your toolbox. I want to thank Kent Keith of the Honolulu Sunrise Club. Kent provided the Greenleaf Institute video and was kind enough to allow us to use his key practices of servant leadership described in the Case for Servant Leadership. That book will be included in the reading list that you will get. Thanks to our guest presenters. Each presenter did their own video. and literally scattered across the United States and Canada, our version of social distancing. John Gay, a very good friend of mine and a videographer, edited and compiled the videos, leveling audio, adjusting light and color variations, and all of the things an editor does with the magic of software. John is a very special guy and pulled the video compilation together for us. And past district governor from District 5020, Maureen Mo Fitz Roberts, has served as co-host, and many thanks to her for helping control the program. Thank you again for coming today to our virtual presentation. It has been our pleasure to share our vision of Service First leadership with you. We will leave the webinar open for a few more minutes in case you want to share a closing comment with us. You can place that in the Q&A. And we wish you well. Hope the days ahead are full of much joy and happiness. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and optimistic. I'm sure that better days lie ahead for us all. Thanks again for coming. Be safe.